Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammy and Nathan Yeager. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about understanding your natural strengths and how to leverage them, how having opposite strengths can complement rather than oppose each other, understanding the energy of your bedroom, and exploring numerology and the deeper meaning behind your decisions. But before we dive into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
I think the thing that fueled me up the most this past week was our very big kid day.
Yeah.
That we spent with some friends who have a 7-year-old and almost 4-year-old. And we went to Luna Park.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Amusement park, rides, carnival food, lots and lots of giggles and laughter.
Yeah.
And no
silly arcade stuff.
And no child tantrums.
No,
so
it was amazing.
It was a good day for all, but I think it was pretty overdue for a theme park because I love them. Fun fact, I've been to all of the Disneylands in the world. Yeah, and it had been a minute, so it was really cool to get on a roller coaster and have some adrenaline and hang out with some kids. So I think that's the thing that fueled me up the most. I'm like got the biggest smile even just reflecting on about it. What about you, Nath? You can't say the same. You say, that was mine too, every week.
Well, there was a few competing fuel ups this week. So the other key thing that we did this week was celebrate our anniversary of our first kiss.
Oh, roller coasters trumped that. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, it did. But so we celebrated it in a couple of different ways. We popped some champagne.
My favourite champagne.
Yeah. So that was super delicious. And then we also went to a gig that night as well, which was really, really fun. We went to see Pendulum, who we've seen a few times before, but yeah, they put on a really amazing show and it was really nice to dance and sing and have a really fun night with you too.
That's how I know I had a really, really good week, right? There was champagne, there was roller coasters, there was really good time with friends, there was a date night, there was dancing. And I actually had some career wins and business wins last week too, which was really good. So all up, pretty good week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But now let's dive into this week's episode.
On this week's episode, we're welcoming Jason Kolevski. After selling his financial advisory business back in 2012, Jason immersed himself in understanding the dynamics between people and the impact of their energy on how they engage, deliver, and perform in all aspects of their life. He's coached individuals, teams, and organizations all around the world and across more than 50 industries. Together with his wife, Linda, they have raised 3 beautiful children and also work together as a team to deliver coaching programs, and they're often referred to as a powerhouse couple. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on board.
It's exciting to have you here.
So I want to go back to your pivot from finance in 2012 to what you do now. And 2012 is actually the year that Nathan and I got married.
Well, there you go. There's always a serendipitous moment that brings people together, isn't there?
That's it.
Oh, look, it's an amazing story that I could literally do a podcast just on that pivot, as you call it. Before I finished my financial planning practice, I had actually been drawn by a coach and an accountant and another financial planner to help them. And I recall the conversations. They came in and they said, look, can you give us a hand on this because I just love the way you've done it. And I said, what do you mean by give you a hand? And they said, well, yeah, can you coach me? And I said, I'm a financial advisor. How can I coach you? And they said, I don't know. You just seem to have a powerful perspective. And I just love the way you put things and frame things. It really helps me to get clear around what I need to do. And so they informally engaged me to coach them. And what I liked about financial planning was that you could really set a person's mindset and shift them with a plan towards getting somewhere. What I didn't like was it took decades to truly see the fulfillment of that plan. And what I experienced with these informal coaching clients was I'd have a powerful conversation and within one session, there'd be a dramatic shift. And so that sort of stimulated, I guess the universe drew me in more than anything. This stimulated this need to just explore a dynamic of myself that I'd never looked at before. In fact, I denied it, if I'm brutally honest. And Look, it was a powerful journey. It wasn't overnight. I had a conversation with my business partner, and long story short, we sold it towards the end of 2011, and then it took a few months to transition clients. And then I literally sat there day one, going, right, I've got no clients. I'm now a business coach of some sort. I call my business mentor, whatever you want to call it,
Mm.
and I've got all this time ahead of me, and I had the whole world to explore based on that energy. So that was quite profound in terms of the way it drew me in, as opposed to a conscious pivot like many of us have done over the last few years because of COVID.
That's a really interesting parallel, I guess, between being a financial advisor, but really what you're working on, I guess, in a lot of that is that money mindset and ways of thinking about money. And so, yeah, there are, I guess, actually a lot of parallels between that and coaching when you kind of actually drill down into what you're really working with.
Yeah, and to be honest, Nathan, I was the sort of advisor that would really, really immerse into the goals and aspirations and what's blocking you, and let's dig deep as to these limiting beliefs, as opposed to let's set that financial plan up. And if I reflect honestly, all the parts of my life through that journey of financial planning that were clunky were me trying to do what you would probably call financial planning. The bits where I was excelling at was connecting with humans and digging behind their beliefs to find out what their true goals. And what I experienced was people saying things like, this is what I want to achieve, or this is what we want to achieve as a couple. And the reality was, once I dig beneath the surface, it had nothing to do with what they thought they came for in the first place. So the parallels are probably even deeper than what you would actually ordinarily expect when it comes to setting goals versus digging behind a person's limited beliefs.
So you and I actually have met a couple of times, kind of in real life, or as in real life as Zoom gets, because you were actually coaching my business partner.
Absolutely. And again, serendipitously, we seem to have been liking each other's posts on social media and commenting and connecting, and never had any form of connection prior to that. And I just felt this strong urge one day. I just reached out to Dan and I said, mate, this might sound a little forward, but would you be keen to just maybe jump on a Zoom and actually meet properly? And he said, I'd love that. And one conversation after another, and he just turned around out of the blue and said, will you coach me? And it's always, Sammy, it's one thing to be asked by a client to coach you, but when that other person is also a mega successful coach in their own right, it's a privilege and an honor like you wouldn't believe. So off we went on this phenomenal journey. It was actually quite beautiful.
Well, and then I had the privilege of honor of watching that transformation quite closely as well. And I suspect there was probably a few sessions in there where he was like, how do I deal with this Sammy chick that I've employed in my business? And then I've decided I'm going to go into business with her.
My file notes are closed, Sammy. I cannot reveal anything.
Patient client confidentiality.
That's right.
So, but the reason that I bring up my business partner, Dan, is that something that he coaches some of his clients on is a tool called Kolbe-A, and you are the expert. You are
Stop it.
the best of the best with this profiling tool. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, Dan had been teaching this to his clients, and then kind of they were getting the tip of the iceberg, and then when they wanted to go deeper, introducing them to you. And I want to just hand the floor to you to sort of share a little bit about the profiling tool that you're using, how you discovered it, and how you've seen it transform people's approaches to the way that they do business and life and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Sammy. So I'll give you the background first. When I was an employee in financial planning, people have the professional development days, and they often would call people in to do different elements of that. One of them was Kolbe, and for the listeners of this, it's Kolbe. And the Kolbe profiling was done. Back then, I was what's called a paraplanner. And a paraplanner is the person in the back office of an advisory firm that basically does the research, the calculations, pulls together financial plans, and then presents them back to the advisor, who then shares all that with the client. And this profile come through, and it was contrary to what a typical paraplanner would look like. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. The firm never went anywhere with it. Okay, off we went. I moved to another business, and again, I was profiled again. And the curious thing for me was not so much, oh, okay, we're doing this profile again. And there's many that have been profiled, personality profiles, etc. But we did this same one again, and those results come back exactly the same. And so it's one of those moments where you go, okay, maybe I should listen here. And when I got into business for myself, I tried to apply it to our own business purely based on the report that I had without consulting anyone. And I was getting quite frustrated because I just didn't know how to maximize the use of this profiling program. And me being me, I'm like, well, you know what? Go and get certified, find out how to do it properly. And lo and behold, I put the search query out to Kolbe, and their response was, because they're based in Arizona in America, of course, and their response was, we're actually coming to Sydney, Australia to do our first ever certification if you'd like to join us. And so off I went, I did the certification. And mind you, Colby's never been back to Australia to do another one. So it was that one.
Serendipitous.
It was so serendipitous. And so I did the certification, and I remember coming back to my financial planning partner and I said, mate, we've got this all wrong. And he said, what do you mean? And I went, well, this means this and this means that. And off we went. And I explained the whole thing to him, what his profile meant, what my profile meant, how they need to interrelate to become better together. And I said, I've got an idea. Rather than you seeing all your clients from, first introduction through to fact finding, through to, plan discovery, et cetera, rather than both of us doing the same sequence of steps, I think we should share them. I should do this for both our clients. You should do that for both your clients. This element will share it. And off we reconstructed that journey of onboarding a new client. And the whole thing was just insanely efficient, more effective. We both actually sat back and went, are we adding value? Because I feel like I just didn't do anything. And I guess when you do something so innate and so instinctive, it feels effortless. And so we took this journey on with our clients, and we paused after half a dozen and said, can you give us some feedback? Like, what's the experience been like for you having two people share what's normally done one-on-one with an advisor? And they said it was profound. We thought you guys had been doing this for 20, 30 years. And what that said to me was, there's an immense amount of power when you align yourself instinctively to your own natural talents. And so when I started coaching, I made an oath to myself that I will not touch another client unless I've profiled them first. Because to me, it's like that instruction manual. It's not personality profiling, as you know, Sammy and Nathan. It's not personality profiling. It's not, testing your cognitive, knowledge, skills, or ability. It's measuring our cognitive strengths, which is all about how we instinctively problem solve and take action. And because it's instinctive, it's like it's hardwired into us. You cannot change it.
And that's why you got the exact same results years apart.
Spot on. In fact, Kathy Kolbe, the founder of Kolbe Corp, decided to put it to the test. And some years ago, they went to their entire database and they said, if you've completed a profile more than 20 years prior, here's another one for free. Do it again. We just want to collect data. And they found it was something like in the 90-something%, people had basically got the same result, or it was an immaterial change. And that consistency, that reliability just gives so much power when you want to understand what works for you and what doesn't, but then also the people around you and how do you form a team and a partnership and synergy.
So what you're sort of talking about is a pretty simple sort of framework, isn't it? Like at the top level, there's 4 numbers that represent your fact finding, your follow through, your quick start, and your implementer.
100%, yeah. And we call that our MO, our modus operandi, our natural mode of operation. Those four numbers tell us on a continuum of 1 to 10, what is your natural inclination? So, sometimes, Sammy, people get a low number and they think, oh, did I get a low score? And we need to correct that and say, no, it's actually a continuum. So it just simply means you're more inclined to do it that way as opposed to this way. And I often use, hands as a metaphor. If you get a score of 1, 2, or a 3, it's like you're left-handed. If you get a score of 7, 8, 9, 10, it's like you're right-handed. And 4, 5, 6 is like you're a little bit ambidextrous. Not completely accurate, but it just gives people a perspective to not look at a low number as a low score.
Yeah, that's a nice visual. Yeah. So I'm curious, like I can see you've got your score in your Zoom profile at the moment. So you're a 5385. Nathan and I have both had our profile done, and we have our numbers. So I'd love to know, like, obviously you were using it with a business partner and sharing a client load where you were able to look at their number and your number and sort of better figure out who should be sort of doing which parts of a process. But I'm curious, how have you seen this work in romantic relationships?
Look, many ways. And I'll share one of my very early stories which freaked me out. Before I jump to that, from my wife and I's perspective, so I'm a 5385, Linda is a 7554, and I've actually profiled 2 out of my 3 children as well. So I understand everyone's nuances. So early on, when I first got certified, like anything, go and use it. That's how you're going to get your runs on the board. That's how you're going to learn to master this art and craft. And I remember sitting there in a situation where this lady had a profile done. And she said, would you do a couple? I know you do mainly business leaders and teams and organizations. Would you work with a couple? I said, yeah, of course. So I profiled her and her husband. So just to give a little context, she worked in the space of practice management, so doing accounts, administrative clerical work, client communication. He's an electrical engineer, so very detailed, very specific. And I remember sitting at their dining table because they were also friends. I said, look, I'll come to your house. And I sat down at their dining table. So I'm explaining what these 4 magical numbers mean. And I can see the light bulbs going on. And all of a sudden, she bursts into tears. And at that point, I shat myself. I thought, oh, my
You're like,
God.
oh, no. I've waded into waters. I don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, what have I done? I've just, what have I said? What have I not said? And I freaked out at first. I'm thinking, oh, my God, I'm just new at this Kolbe stuff. And she said, you've just saved our marriage. And now I don't know who was more surprised, me or him, because I don't think he had any idea at the depth of challenges they were having. So their profiles were in what we called cognitive strain. They were miles apart. Now, in a sports team, we appreciate differences. Like if we talk soccer, you don't want your striker to be the same as your goalkeeper. You want them to have completely different talents. But the thing that's clear on a soccer field is they understand the different roles and how they can complement each other. In a relationship, we just want to get along. We want to be understood. We want to feel connected. We want to feel deep in trust. And so when there's similarities, that becomes quite easy. When there's differences, it can cause quite strain and tension between the 2 couples. So his level of detail was so extreme that she thought that they just didn't understand each other and weren't compatible as a couple. But what was happening was they had very different talents that could complement each other. What she had seen as a problem up until that moment, she immediately saw it as a huge gift to their relationship. And, something as simple as when you say to someone that's got that really long fact find number, that red zone, the first number that you talked about, what do you prefer, the red cushions or the blue cushions? Their response might be, well, it depends. In the morning sunlight, I like the blue cushions, but in the afternoon when the sun's gone down, I prefer the red cushions. But then,
but what fabric is it made of?
Yeah, and all these
how soft is it?
Yeah, the 50 Shades of Grey kind of conversation.
Yeah,
and whilst that's valuable because that person will get to the depth of all sorts of scenarios, if you're sitting there thinking, I just wanted a yes or no answer and you didn't get it, it can cause frustration. And really, that's the essence of a lot of challenges in couples is mismatched expectations when they just don't seem to feel like they're on the same page. But what they're doing is they're speaking in different languages and not realizing why there's a disconnect. So from a perspective of couples and relationships, it's really helped people to understand the other party. And when you understand someone else, and then you understand yourself in that process as well, that's when true depth of connection can happen. So I've seen it happen in, intimate relationships like that. I've seen it work in my own family as a family unit, extending it beyond the couple and going to the children. And then obviously business partners and why they clash and, how they can actually create synergy and that magical 1 + 1 = 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you use the language there about like getting to know yourself. And obviously we're on the Date Forever podcast. And that's a really big element of our show is dating yourself and your chosen person for forever. So I'm curious, like as you went through this profiling experience and you did it twice and got the exact same result, like were there any big light bulb moments or was it just more like, oh, there it is?
Yeah, no, there was a big light bulb moment, especially the second zone's called follow through. And follow through describes what our natural pattern in terms of organizing and systemizing and arranging things is. And I ended up with a score of 3, which means that my natural pattern is to find shortcuts, multitask, find ways around things, break systems so that I can get to things quicker, find unique paths to the same outcome. But that doesn't really work in a lot of workplaces where they're expecting you to follow the system, follow the process, follow the sequence, just, here's the structure, we've been working on it. And now when you bring that into a couples relationship, you could ask Linda the question and she'd probably give you an even deeper answer around this. But I don't necessarily finish everything that I start around the house either. I don't necessarily follow through on plans. The number of times where I might be driving home, talking to Linda on the phone, and she's expecting me to be home in another 15, 20 minutes. And then partway through that journey, I've diverted and the plan's changed. So for me, it was a huge light bulb because it gave me permission to be myself. And I think that's the crux of everything is we are constantly seeking ways to be ourselves, to express ourselves. But sometimes when you're heavily entrenched in a framework like a work scenario or school, there's certain expectations that if you don't fit the mold, then there might be something wrong with you. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there with a profile that's similar to mine that have had stories they've shared with me that they've medicated for ADHD medication, but always felt like nothing was ever wrong. And it's just that their profile allowed them to naturally, start things quickly and chop and change at the drop of a hat and never finish things off and maybe leave a mess behind and love to talk a lot off the cuff and all these sorts of things that are characteristics that could be boxed in as ADHD. But for them, they were just, a particular profile that really was natural for them. And when you finally get that light bulb that says, hey, this is you, be you, and things will shine. I found that once I got that, everything exploded. Once I came into my business and did that, things exploded. Once Linda got her profile, absolutely things went through the roof in understanding it. Once I profiled my children, so many light bulbs, so many light bulbs. Yeah, it's been amazing.
So beautiful. So I know that you know our numbers. I would love your maybe your, I don't know, is it crystal ball? It's not crystal ball because you've got information, but I'd love your perspective on mine and Nate's results and our pairing and where you might see us have some challenges and maybe some things that are probably easy for us.
Or where we can complement ourselves, complement each other.
I'll be kind. And look, I guess that's the thing, as you said earlier, Sammy, there's the surface layer of interpretations and then there's depth.
Yeah.
I mean, we could literally, as you've experienced, spend 2 hours just going through this comparison.
Yeah.
With your two pairing of numbers, you actually sit in multiple zones in what we call in the same action mode. So from that perspective, you're going to find things easy. I mean, you both have that detailed fact finding. You both have that need for asking questions that are more specific. You both need a little bit of context and a bit of background to help you to make decisions. You both naturally do follow through on systems and processes, and routines are absolutely powerful for the two of you. Where you guys differ is in that quick start energy that you mentioned earlier. And that's all about how we take risk and deal with uncertainty. You're actually two opposite ends of the speed. This is where I was talking about one's left-handed and the other one's right-handed. And if I use that as a metaphor, the left hand and the right hand come together and they shake hands perfectly together. Where it can be a little bit challenging is where one isn't ready to change and jump into something new and the other one needs to continue on the same path they're at.
And we've experienced that. We've definitely experienced that where I'm like, let's just do it already.
Yeah. What are you waiting for, Nath? Oh, you're holding me back. So these feelings, without the awareness of this profile, often people that might end up in those scenarios go, I don't know, my partner I just feel like they hold me back. I want to go out and explore, and it's okay if things drop and change at the drop of a hat. They need to have everything known in advance, and you can sigh about these energies, as opposed to going, wow, if it was just me and my constant change and quick start energy, we'd never land anywhere, because I'd be constantly changing the plan before we got to execute on it. And we all know how valuable execution is. So,
yeah, it's really funny actually too, because when we got married back in 2012, so like just over 10 years ago, in one of the wedding speeches that our bridal party did, one of the lines that they said was, "What Sammy starts, Daith finishes." So, and this is before we'd done the profiling tool, and
clearly that was apparent to everyone else too,
except for you guys.
Yeah.
Look, it's amazing, because I think the biggest thing is appreciating the fact that can happen, and even then, it's not even necessarily that what Sammy starts, Nathan will finish, but sometimes what Sammy starts, Sammy won't finish or want to start either. Like, she might have just been idea sharing, and when you can truly appreciate that, it just allows life to be more frictionless, if I can use that word, because I don't know, I truly value relationships. I think, especially now with the introduction of artificial intelligence and all we think we're so fascinated, like we're staring at the miracle in front of us, and yet the miracles have been around us all along. And when you get two humans together, you've just literally got two of the most sophisticated, powerful machines on the planet, but now they're together. And I think that is phenomenal. So for me, when you invited me onto Date Forever, I couldn't wait, because I think, we should be dating not just our intimate partners for life, but we should be dating our children for life. We should be dating our business colleagues for life. And the more we do that, the more we discover about ourselves, which is what I think it's truly about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I so agree. And the longest Harvard study of human happiness agrees with you too, is that our relationships are the key predictor in our happiness, in our well-being, in our joy. It's not our careers, it's not wealth, it's not the things that we accumulate. It's not even necessarily the experiences that we have, but it's that we have quality relationships to share all of those things with.
Yeah, I'd never heard that study, Sammy, so I appreciate you sharing that. From my perspective, I look at the word relationship, and I think everything is relative, and it's relative to ourselves. And if we're all on this planet really to discover the depths of ourselves, or as I say, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And the realization of how powerful a human is, I mean, beyond measure, immeasurably powerful, to even get a glimpse of that scares the daylight out of all of us. And that's where being so close with someone, in relationship with them, helps you to see what's inside of you that you cannot see in any other way. I truly think relationships are magical.
So, JK, obviously this is one tool that you've got in your toolkit to nurture your relationship with self, but have you got any other habits or practices or rituals that really keep that relationship with you topped up?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, there's two elements. So I do energy work every morning. And when I say energy work, it's not necessarily meditation, although there are meditative elements to it. A person that has had a profound impact on what my mornings look like is a guru called Sadhguru. He's written a book called Inner Engineering. It's the only book that if I feel a connection with a new client that's ready to read it, that I'll send that book out. There's many amazing books that I've read, but this is the only book that I buy and send. And what he's created is a practice that allows you to connect with the inner dimensions of yourself. And then from that base, for Linda and I, as a couple, we are constantly communicating. So for us, we have meetings together, not just about business, but we'll talk about the family and what it means to us to move forward in this week, next week. But we'll also often do a 1 or 2 day retreat at the end of each year, or partway through the beginning of the year, where we can set the tone for what we want to focus on. So for me, I think setting intentions goes a long way. I call it the personal bubble. You're going to wake up, you're going to get that email, that Facebook post, or something through the day that might discern you a little. But if you can wake up in the morning and picture yourself in a big bubble, and the more energy you put into that bubble, the bigger that bubble is, and then it's like a protective shield. And so therefore, by the end of the day, the only thing that's going to happen is that bubble's going to deplete. So the bigger it is to start with, the bigger you have around you at the end of the day, because I measure my success based on how joyful I am at the end of each day. Not how many people I've helped, although I am very big about impact, especially impact over income. Not anything. If I'm more joyful at the end of the day than I am at the beginning, then I'm in alignment with my Kolbe instincts. I'm in alignment with my natural intentions, and I'm here to play the game that I was put on this planet with. If that's the result of my day at the end, then I know purely based on how joyful I am. So they're really the tools that I use. Is, like I said, I do some practices. They're called sadhana. The practices that I do in the morning. It sets my intention. I then reflect a lot through the day, because I think awareness really allows us to make more powerful decisions. And then, with my wife, it's very much about communication and connection. I'm very big, Sammy, on taking the people that are around me on the same journey. I have, through my experience of working with leaders throughout the world, seen partners outgrow each other. Maybe the husband, for example, is getting the coaching, the executive coaching, and going deep and growing and getting a new perspective on life, and doesn't share with the spouse. And then all of a sudden, they're talking different languages. They see the world very differently, and then they start to argue and clash. So I'm very big on share this with your spouse, and I do the same with Linda. Whether she's ready for it at the time or not, I'll be like, oh, have you thought about this? And there might be a thought-provoking conversation. And all that does is allows her mind to keep having more awareness, so that the two of us can be on a journey together.
I really like that you shared that, because Nathan and I, our individual personal development journey was there was a fork in the road, and we were growing further apart. There was probably a 3-year window where I went on a huge trajectory of growth. I was in an environment that was stretching me personally, professionally. I was being exposed to new ideas every single day. So my speed of growth was huge. And Nath hadn't really started that journey for himself yet. And it was quite scary to feel like, hey, I really love what I'm doing, and I really love the person that I'm becoming. And I'm now terrified that the person that I love and want to do life with for forever might not fit anymore. And that was a really probably scary, maybe year or so, as we kind of tried to navigate that. And one of the non-negotiables that we have in our relationship now is that we invest in a personal development experience that we share together every year now, whether or not that's an event, a seminar, we read a book together, a course, we do something together alongside of our own individual personal development journeys. So I really like that you're doing something similar.
Yeah, good on you. And look, for us, we're even simpler than that. We simply communicate a lot about it. With 3 children between the age of 9 and 15, it's not always easy to go on a 3-day, conference. It's just very difficult. However, having those conversations is very easy.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy when you build the practice and the habit, isn't it?
Correct. When you start off, because you can't. Otherwise, you do what a lot of people do is they don't communicate. They go and get jacked up on energy at a conference and come back and just spray their partner with it, and it creates a bigger wedge. But when you've got these little bases, and it's all about building blocks. We communicate about this, and then we share about that, and maybe it's a thought-provoking question, and it's, hey, how about we have a session around this? And I'll often sit down and say, well, let's not run a coaching session, but let me explore, and we'll get the whiteboard and the texters out and start sharing about what this means. And look, I know this is about Date Forever, but I actually earlier this year had coaching sessions with 2 of my eldest children, and to sit there and explore a deep conversation around energy. And I have shared with you that, I was exposed very early on in my career to the energy of numerology and feng shui, and how energy flows around a building and how you can interpret that. So we have these conversations with my 2 eldest children, and for them to sit there at the age of 15 and 13 with a notepad and a pen while dad's whiteboarding away, explaining concepts and sharing some stuff with them, and they're coming back with questions that I'm like, oh my God, I don't think some of my clients would have asked that question. It just blows.
They're getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like not only a proud moment for me, but an inspiring and an insightful moment, that our brains are ready a lot sooner than what we would expect. So many people say, oh my God, JK, the conversation we're having around energy, I can't believe I've been stinging to have this conversation with someone. I don't think I can talk to anyone about it. And my response is, that's all in your head, because I have those conversations all the time with everyone. So I think our perspective holds us back. And when you can open up those energies, it's profound what you get back.
Yeah. I think one of the little practices that Sammy and I have as well around this is, like, if we're both reading books, that we'll just share like one of the little tidbits from the book that we've been listening to that day or been reading that day. And and it does just open that conversation. It doesn't need to be a huge big thing of like, sitting down and coaching for a couple of hours, or like it can literally just be sharing like, I was reading this book and I found this thing really interesting.
100%. That's brilliant. And I think we read a lot of books but don't do much with them.
Yeah.
There's a professional speaker based in Australia, in South Australia, called Ving Jan. And he actually...
Vin's a mate of mine.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and he's been on our show.
Oh, well, there you go, yeah.
If you haven't listened to that episode, Vin does a deep dive in communication, so I highly recommend that episode.
Yeah, awesome, yeah. And look, one of the posts I recently heard from him, he said when he reads a book, he gets a notepad and a pen and takes one action from each chapter. So from each chapter, what is one thing, not 50 things, even though there's going to be 50 gems in there, but what is one thing that you would do from that one chapter? And imagine, doing that with your partner. And I think it's about deepening that connection. As you become more aware of yourself, the better that you can be in a relationship, because the person that you're relating to is not there to make you happy. You need to be happy to then support that relationship journey as well. So, I think that's fantastic that you guys share like that. That's awesome.
I have two things that I really want to ask you. One is about the energy, and the other is about your retreat that you go on with Linda. So if I can go back to the energy, I know that you have a lot of experience with Feng Shui and managing energy in spaces. And I'm curious, maybe if we can just narrow it down to like maybe the bedroom as the sanctuary of a couple for a home. Like, is there any like quick win recommendations of what you should have in there, what you shouldn't have in there to sort of create the right energy?
Yeah. So look, I studied and worked with a lady by the name of Chris Brazel, beautiful lady, friend of mine. And so I learned a lot from her, apart from other people as well. In the bedroom, there's a couple of key things. So number one, when you're in a relationship, you want things to look like they're in pairs. So, often you'd walk in and sometimes, even just to understand, business partners, I'd go into business offices and I'd see certain things missing. In a couple intimate relationship, if you walk in and one bedside table with one lamp and the other bedside table hasn't got a lamp, you'd immediately look at the disconnect, that there's not a balance. So you want to see things that look like in partnership. However, the most profound thing is the position of the bed. The bed should not be in what we call the coffin position. And the coffin position is, and it's a bit hard to describe, visually by using audio language.
Yeah, when we're on a podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I want everyone to just imagine you're standing at the door looking into the bedroom. If you could literally walk forward and you hit the bed's in the wrong spot. Okay? The bed should not be in your pathway. And the second component, look, where it should be, we'd probably have to have a visual around that. But that's the first thing that I'll say. So if anyone's in that position, move your bed. And then the second part is, when you're lying in your bed, you need to be able to comfortably see the entry to that room. Otherwise, you lose power and control. So sometimes people will have the bed head up against the wall that contains the door. So in other words, you'd walk into the doorway and you'd have to look to one side to see the bed or the bed head. If that's the case, it's almost like you've got this subconscious surprise that could constantly come through, this little connection where you're just looking over your shoulder, almost like a jolt. Now, people often make that same mistake in offices, and that's where I mainly use my energy work, is I walk into an office and I'll see the managing director or the CEO, and he's got his back to the door. He's sitting there crunching away. He might have an amazing view, or she might have an amazing view in front of them. However, they are constantly sitting there with this energy that someone could walk in behind them and startle them or have them unaware. As soon as you turn that desk around and put them maybe in the center, or at least have them so that they can see the door clearly, I've had people say, mate, you won't believe the changes that are happening in our business now. I feel more powerful. I feel more connected. I feel like I'm really shifting things. So coming back to the bedroom, the bed position is the most important part. Looking for things that are pairs. And the last part that I'll say, which is, I mean, I could sit here honestly and give you the whole 1 hour just around this, but the thing that used to come up quite common was hanging on to things from the past a lot. So, you'd have things in the bedroom that represented the old days or, certain things that are in their life. And it's critical that you don't hang on to the past. When you're in that bedroom, you're there for number one, sleeping to replenish your energy and to connect with your partner. So I know people will say, oh, you shouldn't have a TV in there. And, but then we could also argue there shouldn't be certain pictures on the wall. There shouldn't be certain color schemes. There's a whole host of things that you should avoid depending on the numerology and the number of the house. But as a bare minimum, the position of the bed and having balance in that room is critical.
Do you give us ticks for all those? I was running through. I
think so. I think we're
We invested. It was probably 3 years ago that we brought a lot of attention to that space and that being a sanctuary for sleep and sex. And it's been years now, no phones in the bedroom. We don't charge them in there. There's not a clock in there. Yeah, we invested in some really good quality linen. We changed the lighting. We got a diffuser so that the fragrance was really good because we're trying to build that real sanctuary for us. So thank you for sharing that. And I think that is a really underestimated, and those are a handful of really quite small things that you can consider because you probably already have a bed, like just think about where it is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. So total change of direction. I want to talk to you a little bit about the retreat that you and Linda go on because Nathan and I do something similar. We call ours our annual game planning day, or we normally take 2 days right at the end of November, and we plan with the seasons. So we start 1st of December is really the beginning of our new year that we share together and our goals. So I'm curious, what do you do on your retreat? Because we might add some things to our agenda.
Right. Is that what this is all about? Share the agenda. So look, ours is quite simple and predominantly because of time constraints. So we ours is going to sit generally in school hours, although we'll at least bookend at the end of it to have someone pick them up at least. So we'll drop the kids off at school. Number one, we always go to somewhere inspiring that's got a lot more nature around it. So not a corporate building. A lot of the work that I do around these retreats is close to me is the Hunter Valley. So, there's vineyards around. So we'll go to a vineyard location where we can hire out a room for the day. One of the most profound ones that we had is we chose a room that had a snooker table in the middle. And don't get those ideas.
Like, what were you doing with the table?
Yeah. We're talking about balls in the pockets and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, and the numerology of like what balls, what pockets.
So that's exactly right. So what we would do is we'd have our agenda based on all things that are important to us, and there were things around family, the children specifically, how we're going to grow, what our needs are. What's working, what's not working, all that, money, all those sorts of things. So our agenda is nothing spectacular. It's just what works for us. And what we would do is, as we're going through these topics, to understand perhaps the deeper desire around something. See, because if I say to someone, what do you want? What do you really want out of your life? They can give me a response. However, the subconscious energy behind that response will work out, well, is that what you really want? Because the numerology behind what you're choosing, or those numbers, or the date that you've put, it says something completely different to me. Can we explore what that looks like? And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I was never aware, but absolutely. What you've just shared, JK, is 100%. So we would use the snooker table and combine numerology, because obviously every ball's got a number, and then the snooker table from where I was going to say tee off, but you don't tee off, you cue off. Obviously it's got 6 pockets. So in feng shui, there's different zones of a building or an area or a space that relate to wealth and abundance, relationships, children and creativity, knowledge, spirituality, and so on and so forth. There's 9 zones, and you can look them up on what's called the Bagua map. BAGUA. So the Bagua map tells you the different zones. And so we would relate these zones to the holes in the snooker table. And so we'd say, okay, let's look at our wealth and abundance, and we'd make some decisions. And then we go, okay, let's play snooker and see what ball goes in that pocket. And based on the ball and the numerology of that, we'd interpret perhaps what our deeper truths are that we weren't aware of. So we're using the snooker table to dig beneath the surface of our decision making to understand at a subconscious level, what are we really trying to say here? And so that's what our retreat looked like. We haven't sort of done a 2-day because of children and all that sort of stuff, as I said, but through that day, it's profound what shows up. And because one of the locations we chose also has a golf course, at the end of the day, we'll jump in a golf cart. We won't play golf, but we'll jump in the golf cart and we'll go and connect across all the 18 holes. And again, there's numerology involved in the hole numbers, and we'll be sinking in and staying there and going, okay, we're at hole number 5. You know, the 5's all about change and movement and nourishment and getting a little deeper with, you know, what truly needs to evolve in our lives. And, you know, how are you feeling? And all of a sudden some light bulbs come up. So we'll go through the journey of, we won't stop at every hole, but when we feel a connection, that's what we would do. So that's what our retreat looks like. As I said, there's a lot of numerology, there's a lot of energy conversations in there, there's a lot of interpreting, you know, this is what we've decided consciously, but what about the deeper dimension? What are we really missing here? And how do we get to that point? All the stuff that I would normally do with a client, but we're using the snooker table to get back onto ourselves.
That's really beautiful. I can't encourage couples enough to go and create your own practice around carving out intentional time to get on the same page, align on what your goals and your expectations are for the year that was and the year to come. I think it's one of the best things that couples can do.
Yeah,
JK, to say thank you for joining us today. We've provided a week's worth of education to a classroom in Indonesia. What's really beautiful about this project is that they nurture little girls to get into the classroom, which sometimes they would miss out on education. So we know that when we get little girls educated, they lift up their families, their communities, and their countries. So thank you so much for being here, sharing with us and making that possible.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, you're doing phenomenal work and connecting with people to share stories. It just opens up other people's minds to step outside of what they think is normal and maybe do something a little out there and be bold and brave. So I can't thank the two of you enough for having me on here. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you.
No worries. So, JK, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about Kolbe or numerology or something else, how can they do that?
Yeah, so look, many ways. The simplest way is if they want to do a Kolbe profile, they can literally just go to the Kolbe website, KOLBE.com, or just search up Kolbe Corp. On there, you can pay, I think it's about $60 US. They can do a profile. And if they go to find a consultant, you know, they can find Jason Kolevski or Linda Kolevski in Australia, and then they can reach out to us and we can help them understand what it truly means. I'm on social medias briefly. I'm a little bit on LinkedIn under my name, and also Instagram under the same name, Jason Kolevski. Look, for me, I truly believe in serendipity. In fact, I call it a smile. To me, a smile, it's an acronym I came up with, and it's a serendipitous moment in life's experiences. So a smile to me is where someone goes, hey, I didn't go looking for you, but somehow I found you. And I find that's the most profound way to connect with me. So if they're open, they'll know.
I suspect that there'll be people with this in their ears right now thinking that exact thing. So thank you, JK, for showing up and being here with us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.